Right, there you go. So I'll pass over to Lucy and to Jenny for their presentation. I'm just going to turn my camera off and I'll let you go.
Thank you. So yeah, good morning everyone. So we are from West Yorkshire Health and Care Partnership and the Staff Mental Health and Wellbeing Hub. So I'm Lucy, I'm one of the assistant psychologists, and my colleague Jenny, also on the call, is one of the assistants. So just to give you a bit of background about the hub, in case you guys don't know who we are. So we are the West Yorkshire Staff Mental Health and Wellbeing Hub. We are open to all staff and volunteers in all organisations, whether you work in health, mental health, social care, and this includes volunteers. So anyone that works in LTHT can access our service. It doesn't matter what size your organisation is, what type of organisation. If you are included within West Yorkshire, you are able to come. So our message is this is for you and for your staff. So I just wanted to include this quote. When I came across this, I just think it describes sometimes when we work in health and social care settings. It's a really good way of explaining that sometimes us as helpers struggle to actually ask for help ourselves. So here comes Edward Bear now, down the stairs behind Christopher Robin, bump, 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 on the back of his head. It is, as far as he knows, the only way of coming down the stairs. He is sure there must be a better way, if only he could stop bumping for a moment to think about it. So I feel as this quote is just a really nice way of saying that often we know how to seek the support. Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. But when we do, sometimes it's actually about stopping and taking that moment and taking just a second to say, actually, I need to start looking after my own well-being, as well as the sort of people that I work for. So if I hand over to you, Jenny.
Hi, so yeah, sometimes it's helpful to just sit down and take a moment to ask ourselves, like, how am I showing up today? And if you take a look at these pictures, we were wondering what resonates with you. So if I'm being honest, for me right now, the guy hanging off a cliff resonates with me. I sometimes feel like I feel so busy sometimes, and like I've got so much on and lots of kind of pots bubbling. I've got, you know, home life and work life, and my daughter's gone on a school trip today, and then she forgot a backpack with a lunch in, and so I had to run back and take that. And you just think, oh, but then I've got a meeting at 9. It's just like, oh my God, I sometimes feel like I am hanging off a cliff, kind of carrying on. So we were just wondering whether it's a roller coaster or something quite peaceful, and you are feeling relaxed today and you've had a good weekend, or if you're kind of riding the waves and you're in control and you're doing okay. Or there's a picture of the busy city down there. Do you feel like you're rushing around? And then there's the guys there working out, whether you feel like you've got this and you're feeling really strong and powerful and you feel like you're a warrior kind of thing. So if you can just put in the chat which kind of picture resonates with you and why, if you feel comfortable doing that, or there aren't that many of us. So if you want to speak up and tell us which one might resonate with you and why, then you're welcome to do that too. So we'll just give you a minute to think about that. I don't know which resonates with you, Lucy, today. You're feeling a bit calmer than I am.
Yeah, I feel like I'm probably maybe the wave image. I feel like I'm riding the wave, but it's coming over the top, and sometimes the busyness is starting to sort of take over. So we've got in the chat the busy street. I'm in for a busy week this week. Yeah, definitely Monday morning feels. Again, another one, a busy street. I feel like I'm constantly going from one thing to another with not a lot of time to catch up. Yeah, I think that particularly at the moment, it does feel, coming out of the other side of the pandemic, that everyone is we're trying to catch up on some of the things we've missed. We're trying to sort of catch up on everything, really, aren't we? That the last 2 years it's stopped to. We've also got the roller coaster. I feel calm, but probably the wave, because I'm not going on, and a big decision to make this week and Horizons on the Change. Yeah, lovely. So it feels as though sort of it's calm, we're moving, but we're definitely moving in a direction. Brilliant.
That sounds quite interesting, Rachel. Kind of big decisions to make and changes on the horizon. That sounds quite, well, it could be exciting or it couldn't be. It does sound interesting.
We've just got one more person typing, I think. Let's have a look. The lake for you. Yeah, brilliant. So a really nice scenic sort of background. I find that picture quite calming, quite relaxing. Sort of just having that space to sort of think and be in nature as well. Brilliant. So yeah, sometimes it's really important just to sort of pause and reflect on how you're feeling in the moment. I think sometimes when we're on a Monday morning, all we're thinking about is go, 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 what have we got to do this week? But taking a second out just to sort of think and reflect on how we're showing up, how is these interactions going to impact on my week? So if I am feeling, like Jenny said, that she's hanging on that cliff edge, how is that going to impact on her well-being, on her interactions? So what we're going to talk about today is a framework that we use in the Hub for Staff Wellbeing. So it's called the Me, We, Us framework. So it's all about how us as individuals, for the me part, we can look after our own well-being, how we as colleagues, as a team, can support each other, and how us as a larger team or organisation can support everyone in that team. So all these things are interlinked. The support for ourselves will help the support for our colleagues. The support for the colleagues will help the support for the entire team, and it all goes round and they all interlink together. So I'll pass back to you, Jenny.
So again, kind of if we sit down and think, what do you currently do to support your own well-being? So whether that's a nice walk in the countryside, exercising, cooking, sleeping, watching TV or reading. I think I quite like to sit down and relax with some Netflix, and I have my dog, so I like to take my dog out for a nice walk. I do like cooking. With a glass of wine though, so that probably doesn't support my well-being. It is quite relaxing. So if you can think about what you currently do to support your own well-being and put that in the chat, that'd be interesting to know. What about you, Lucy? How do you support your well-being?
So I think I'm a bit the same as you. Sometimes I think working at home, we can very much feel like we don't go outside, we don't get the fresh air. So I like often to sort of go out at lunchtime just to get a break from the computer, a break from the same four walls sometimes, to get some fresh air, get some movement as well. Exercise is brilliant to sort of help support your well-being as well. So we've got in the chat hobbies, yeah, brilliant. Exercise is a major one. Healthy eating and taking some time out for myself. Pamper nights and writing, lovely. Playing football, watching football, walking the dog and running. Yeah, so exercise is brilliant because it gives us all these positive endorphins. It helps us to sort of just start to feel better. Green spaces as well. Yeah, being out in nature, getting the fresh air we need. If anyone lives in Yorkshire, it's absolutely beautiful. So getting out and getting involved. We've got yoga, Pilates, meditation. Yeah, brilliant. Exercise, working in nature, healthy eating. Yeah. All these things all are brilliant to support our well-being, and it's so lovely to sort of see that people are doing these things. So if I pass back to you, Jenny.
Yep, so again, touching on what everyone said that they pretty much do already, really. Eating well, as we know, what we can eat really impacts upon our mood and our energy levels. We might fancy something in the moment like a takeaway or some chocolate, and if that becomes a daily thing, kind of comforting ourselves with food, you know, it does have a knock-on effect. You know, we might feel tired, have less energy, have less strength to cope with anything that is challenging. Taking time out to relax and do things we enjoy. As we've said, kind of like walking, Pilates, yoga, any kind of different hobbies that are a distraction really from the norm. Keeping creative, yeah, keeping active, sorry, increases our endorphins to improve our mood. Managing stress, yeah, delegating where possible, trying not to take everything on ourselves, avoiding unhealthy habits, excessive smoking or drinking, and asking for help when we need it, being comfortable to say no. So when one says to me it's kind of better to feel uncomfortable and say no to someone than carry on doing something that you just don't want to do, because that can really linger with us and it does make us feel uncomfortable. And so yeah, it's about knowing when to say no and looking after yourself where possible.
I think it's really important, the last point, is because actually it can be really difficult to ask for help, and so sometimes that is the first step to sort of seeking support for your well-being. And again, being helpers and working in the capacity that a lot of you probably work in, actually it goes sort of against what we like to do by saying no to something. But sometimes we've got to think about our own well-being first and how that is going to impact on us as an individual.
Yeah, so it's important to know what works for you. Someone might like running, someone might like yoga, someone might just like watching TV, someone might enjoy playing with the children, taking the dog for a walk. So it is about what works for you and not about what works for others. And also it's important to notice any changes within yourself. Sometimes if we are stressed and under pressure and have lots going on, we don't sit down and pause and actually think, okay, yeah, I haven't been sleeping. Actually, yes, work is affecting my sleep. Are you struggling to manage your daily task? Is your workload becoming too much? Are you feeling overwhelmed more often, kind of less able to cope with everything? Yeah, so as we've said, it's important to kind of take the time and think, right, is this getting too much for me now? And if it is, then take a step back, try and think about what you could do to reduce your workload or to reduce your stress and pressures and see how that goes. And if you're still not sleeping and you're still feeling perhaps a little bit more anxious or a little bit more restless, you feel like everything's getting on top of you, then, you know, as a hub, we are here to support you with that. So whether that be, you might just feel okay having just someone to talk to as a one-off, or we do offer, as we'll go on to talk about later, any psychological therapies. But it is important to kind of pause before that point and to try and kind of recognise these early warning signs before you do get to a point of exhaustion or burnout, and to look after yourself, to try and help you not get to that point. And it's about giving yourself permission to do that. Sometimes I feel guilty for just sitting down and watching a programme for half an hour, and I think, oh, I should be doing this or I should be doing that. But actually, no, it's okay. You know, take that extra 5 minutes and go for that walk or ring that person and do what feels good for yourself.
I think something that I've heard once that really resonated with me was that someone had been working, I can't remember exactly what the job was, but they had a really, really busy day. They'd sort of only been able to eat on the go. And they got home and all their family was there and they wanted to spend time with their children, but they actually took half an hour to sit down and eat a hot meal because they hadn't managed to do that all day, but they just had that time to themselves to sit and eat a hot meal. And they said that they felt that their interactions with their family and their children, because they'd had that space and time just to sort of reflect on the day and have some time for themselves, that they actually found their interactions with their family had improved as a result. So it is really about giving yourself that time and that permission to do something about your own well-being. So we wanted to, Jenny mentioned before about some of the resources available. So here are some of the resources that are available through the Hub. We've got the Trust e-learning module. So this is something that's really useful if you think, actually, I just want to learn a bit more about how I can improve my own well-being. There's a lot on there about stress. So if stress is something you're particularly struggling with, so you're struggling to sort of manage your workload maybe, or you just find it really sort of different things getting on top of you in terms of stress. We've got skills for being well in adversity, stress buster, well-being in the workplace. These are all completely free. You just log on via the Trust. I can send sort of the presentation round with all the links in. And these are just really good at just checking in with yourself and checking what you're doing and giving you sort of some tips and some advice as to how to manage stress. The other thing we've got is the House of Wellbeing. This is a programme we've been running through from February to April. So there's just a sort of snapshot of some of the things that are going on in March. So we've got things like self-care and relaxation. We've got men's sleep issues, self-care for carers, reflexology for menopause and balancing hormones. So these are just very short online sessions that just give you that sort of, I think they're about between half an hour and an hour, just having that break, having some sort of support and learning about how we can look after ourselves and sort of manage some of these things. And the other thing we've got is our website. This is a brilliant place to sort of signpost people to. We've got loads of self-help materials on there, loads of additional offers. So I would advise anyone to sort of have a look at that and see what's on there that might be able to support them.
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, we do have a staff support line. So if you feel as though you would like to speak to someone for some emotional support, our support line's available 8 AM to 8 PM, 7 days a week. And it's a free phone number. It's entirely confidential. We don't have to let your employers know that you're in touch with us or your GP unless there becomes a safeguarding issue. So it might be that you feel like you just want a conversation and you feel okay after that. Or if you're doing the support line and you feel like you would like some more support, they can refer you into our psychological therapies. So we offer CBT, EMDR, counselling. We also are in partnership with Relate. So if you're having any relationship difficulties, we can put you on to Relate. You can self-refer as well via our website. There's a self-referral form on there. And again, the therapy service is confidential as well. We offer 6 sessions, and then if we feel that you need some more support after that, we can give you another 6 after that. We're currently at, I think it's about a 4-week wait list, but we are making some additions to our service, so we will be able to get that down, I imagine, to kind of a 1 or 2 week wait list within the next month or so.
And I think it's really important that if you do feel like you need some support, to seek support early, because often what we see is people come through that are sort of, they've been struggling for quite a while, and it's sort of all come to a head at one point and they're just really struggling. So seeking support early is really important to sort of manage, because the job roles and the environment we work in can be really difficult, and it can result in a lot of different experiences of difficult feelings and struggling to cope. So yeah, our message is sort of seek support early where you can. So our next question to you guys is sort of, how do your team support each other? So we're moving on to sort of the we aspect. So how can we support our colleagues, our team? So if there is anything you can think of that you might do to sort of support your colleagues, or that you do as a team, if you could just pop it in the chat and we'll see what you guys come up with.
Lucy and I we work full-time remotely, and there are only about 6 people in our immediate team. But we're the only 2 that are full-time working into the hub, so Lucy and I we support each other just with informal chats, really. I mean, it's pretty much the only thing that we can do working remotely, but we do make sure we connect every day, and we sometimes talk about work, we sometimes don't. We just keep that contact going, because it can be quite isolating working from home and quite lonely sometimes. So yeah, I'd say that's how we support each other.
Yeah, definitely. So we've got regular check-ins with the team. So yeah, checking in, I think when we've been removed from sort of an in-face person, we'd actually just over a cup of tea say, oh, how are you? Did you have a nice weekend? Whereas that is completely removed because we're working from home. So actually having them conversations. We've also got flexible working, being more open to others. Yeah, lovely. So being able to sort of work flexibly. So saying to your team, actually, if I really need to go to this appointment this afternoon, so I'm going to work later on today. It means that we can actually be involved in our life as well as being working. Some of the other ideas, sort of some of the pictures that I was thinking of, is delegating. So the image where it's passing down to different people. So when one person's struggling, what can we do to support their workload? If they're feeling really overwhelmed, really stressed, is there ways that we can manage that? The other images I have, yeah, like me and Jenny said, we check in. So over a cup of tea, it might be virtual at the moment, but hopefully we'll get back to a sort of more normal way of living and being in person as well. So some of the things we can do to support our team, this is a really nice sort of way to remember it, is the see, say, sign. So most people work full time, and our colleagues are actually people that we come to know quite often. So it's all about looking out for changes in our colleagues. So has their has their behaviour changed? Have they become more agitated, maybe more withdrawn? So someone that often might have come in sort of said, oh, good morning everyone, how are you? Have you noticed they might have come in and said, maybe they didn't say anything, maybe they're just looking a bit flatter, maybe they're just not as sort of cheery and happy as they were before. Are they making more mistakes? This is something that, obviously we're all human, we all make mistakes, but is this someone that generally doesn't normally do things like that? Has there been changes in the work that they're doing, the way they're bringing themselves to work? Are they more absent? Have you noticed that maybe in a team situation, they normally contribute, whereas actually they're sort of holding back, they're not getting involved? So looking out and noticing changes in our colleagues is the first thing. Next thing is the say, so asking how they are and asking if they're okay. Sometimes this is just all that's needed to open up a conversation. If someone's struggling, it's just letting them know that you're there. So making sure that this is in private, so asking them how they're feeling and if they need to talk about anything. What you'll often find is that if someone is struggling, it might be that they're actually struggling to ask for that support. So if you can feel confident enough to say, I'm here, are you okay? If you don't want to talk about it right now, let me know, and I'm always here to talk about it. And the final thing is to sign. So to signpost people, we're hoping through this presentation what you'll get is a lot of resources that if you are wanting to support your colleague, you'll know sort of where to find these resources. So understanding what's available. So if you have the confidence so you've noticed the change in someone, you're going to go ask them if they're okay, you're going to have that conversation. You'll feel really prepared if you come and you go, actually, I've just heard this service, I can signpost you to it, here's the information. It just helps to support the conversation around wellbeing and sort of seeking support. The next thing, and this ties in with sort of the regular check-ins that we heard in the chat, is the Start Well, End Well framework. So this is a really nice, we didn't create this, I think it's come originally from sort of an NHS background, and it's a framework for sort of checking in with our staff. So what we can do is at the beginning of the shift, and this is something that is quite easy to sort of implement into a day because it's very much having them team conversations at different points of the day. They can just be sort of a 5-minute time period. So at the beginning of the shift, we're asking them an overview of the day. Has anyone got any concerns? So there's nothing worse than coming into work feeling really, really worried about something that you've got to do. Addressing them worries and concerns at the beginning of the day can help to plan. It also can help to identify if anyone is struggling so that they can sort of maybe give them more support, or we can sort of help to manage their worries and concerns. The next thing we can do, and this one's an optional one, so if someone has addressed maybe some worries or concerns, having sort of a pit stop. So having someone partner up with them just to check in the middle of the day. So if something challenges happens, this is also really important. So I often think of working in a very ward environment. If something really difficult's happened, have we checked in with the staff? Have we checked in to make sure they're okay? So just building this into our day can help to manage wellbeing. And the final thing is the checkout, and I really like this because it's about reflecting and sort of having that moment to shut off and wind down before you're going home. So checking in on what's gone well. If there's anyone we want to thank, so maybe we were really struggling, we've had a really lovely conversation with someone, just to thank them, just to show sort of our appreciation. It also makes us feel really good. But also to offload and to let them know what we're going to do when we get home. Going back to what I said previously, it might just be going and having a hot meal when you get home. I'm going to go home, I'm going to go and watch TV for half an hour, I'm going to go home, I'm going to read my children a story. It's just reflecting and planning what we're going to do. So the Start Well, End Well framework is a lovely way of building into sort of our day-to-day sessions, how we can sort of support our colleagues. So some of the other resources available, so if I just pass back to Jenny for this one.
Yeah, so we have React Mental Health, so free active learning skills training sessions. Each online session is 90 minutes, and Lucy and I have both done this. It helps to build confidence in healthcare managers to speak with and support colleagues. So kind of gives a loose framework of how to what's the word? Begin a conversation with someone about their mental health. So that sometimes can be the hardest thing. You know, people don't know what to say, they feel a bit uncomfortable. So it gives a guiding framework of how to bring up a conversation and to check in with staff. So that's for all managers, supervisors, team leaders and those with caring responsibilities. It is really interesting, and you do find some helpful tips. Even if you're not a manager yourself, it's quite good and quite helpful just to speak to your colleagues with a framework in mind if you are struggling of how to kind of bring about a conversation about mental well-being.
Then there's the Mind Action Well plan. So this is something that can be used sort of on a personal level, but also can be used to support colleagues. So it's just sort of a free downloadable guide that just identifies how you sort of can support your own well-being. It starts to think about changes as well. So if this is something you could do with maybe a colleague, you could say, actually, when I'm struggling, maybe I've become a bit more withdrawn. If they know that, that's also a way in of having these conversations. Oh, so I've noticed you've been a bit withdrawn today. What can I do to support you? It's starting to facilitate the conversations. The benefit of that is once it's done in advance. So when someone is struggling, you know exactly what you can do to support them. It's a really good way, like it says, as a conversational guide. Again, these are for anyone. So on the Mind website, there is a guide for line managers, for employees, but also for supporting staff at home. So I think well-being, it's hard to have a conversation over Teams, over Zoom about sort of well-being. It just doesn't feel as natural when you're behind a screen talking to a screen. So it's really important that we have got a separate guide for supporting well-being at home. And the final thing is time to change. So this is a social movement to change about the way people think about mental health. There's loads of free resources. I definitely would recommend people checking out that website, and it's all about changes to mental health and changing attitudes around that. So yeah, I'll send the presentation around so that all the links are there. So the next thing we want you guys to think about is, how does my organisation or team support my own well-being? So if anyone can think of anything that maybe their organisation, or I know you guys come from a very large organisation, but what does maybe your team do? So what is happening in your team that they can do to support well-being? So things I like to think about, I think someone said it before, was flexible working. So that work-life balance, having the balance between the two. Things like team building days, training, sort of the wellbeing event being put on today. That's an example. Is there any other sort of examples of how your organisation might support your own wellbeing or the wellbeing of your colleagues?
I was speaking to an organisation the other day, and their team's partnered up and they're making out some wellbeing buddies. So everyone chooses one person and they have their own wellbeing buddy, and they check in with each other every day. So I thought that was quite a nice thing that their organisation have put in place.
We've got in the chat, we've got health and wellbeing training, yeah, brilliant. Mental health first aiders, yeah. So these are all things that in organisations that help to support wellbeing, and sort of the people that are promoting wellbeing as well. So these are so important to have in. We've got a couple of other people typing in the chat. James beat me to it. Yeah, so you mental health and wellbeing champions. Yeah, there's all these things are structures in a dedicated health and wellbeing team. Yeah, so in larger organisations, is there someone that is promoting health and wellbeing? Is there someone that is looking out for staff wellbeing? So yeah, brilliant. So some of the things, one of the frameworks we like to use is, we call it pies, which is always nice, and always first thing in the morning starts us thinking about tasty pies, so it's always a good one to include. So PIE stands for proximity. So it's really important in a larger organisation to try and keep people in their role. So this links in with people seeking support early. So if we can keep people in their role whilst reducing their stress and improving their well-being, overall, if we can get people to seek support earlier, it's going to help. The second thing is immediacy, so encouraging staff to seek support early. So we're going to discuss a little bit later about wellbeing ratings, and this is actually something I do within my own team. My supervisor does with me. So asking in our regular meetings and our supervision, how would you rate your wellbeing? What this does is it starts to open up that conversation. If I rated my wellbeing maybe a 7 this week, and then next week I was down to a 5, it's all about opening that conversation as to what has changed, what can we do to bring that rating up. Expectancy, so reassuring staff that these emotions are expected and normal, and it can be really difficult and challenging, but it's really important to acknowledge that if these emotions are overwhelming and they're staying around for a very long time, encouraging them to seek help. And simplicity, often, without oversimplifying, it's simple things like we spoke about this morning. A good routine, good sleep, exercise, having downtime can really help to support our well-being. So the wellbeing rating, like I spoke about before, is all about how we rate our wellbeing. So this is something that is completely up to you guys if you want to do it. Do not feel any pressure to do it. But if anyone would like to rate their wellbeing in the chat at the current time, so the scale on the screen, we've got 1, if you can see in the top corner, we've got 1 to 10. Would anyone rate their wellbeing this morning? So I think if I was going to rate my wellbeing, I would probably be a 7 this morning. I woke up, it's Monday morning, had a lovely weekend, but I definitely felt as though I was coming into work this morning with a lot to do. What about you, Jenny?
I'd say between 5 and 6. I feel like I've had a good weekend but busy, and like you, I feel I've got a lot to do today and a lot to do for the next couple of weeks. And I think knowing you've got a lot to do indefinitely with no end in sight can weigh heavy on my shoulders, actually.
So we've got a couple of people putting some numbers in. So we've got quite a range of different numbers. Yeah, so we've got 3, 7, 5, 5. Brilliant. So now what I want you to try and think about is what would one thing you could do that could push that score up one point. So it could move it from a 5 to a 6, a 7 to an 8, a 3 to a 4. What would be one thing you could do to sort of improve your well-being, maybe today or this week?
I think for me it'd be actually just to go for a run or a bit of exercise. I know the other day I was thinking about going to the gym and I thought, well, that's an hour and a half, I could be doing this. But actually, in hindsight, I should have taken the hour and a half out for myself. I think today I need to maybe do something like that, and that will lift my mood.
Yeah. Doing more of my hobbies, yeah, brilliant. So doing things that we actually really enjoy, it can just help us to, when we do something we enjoy, we get a good feeling off it. It helps us improve our well-being, particularly if it's something that a lot of hobbies are very sort of do have a therapeutic benefit. So thinking of things like gardening or painting, often these are the things that give us that downtime, give us that time to relax. Just see if anything else comes through the chat. To just stop for a moment and have some time to reflect and assess to make plans moving forward. Yeah, brilliant. So actually just sometimes we've got so much going on, we're so busy that we don't even know what to start first. So having that second to sort of sit and think, okay, what is a priority to do? What do I need to do? Let me reflect and plan out what I want to do moving forward. Yeah, lovely. One more person typing. And I think I really resonate with the point above that actually today I just need to sit and think about what's a priority for this week. What can I do to move forward? Okay. So the next thing I want to put in the chat is, how would you rate your team well-being? So thinking about sort of your colleagues in your team, how would you rate that well-being as an overall team? Do you think you're working quite well as a team? Do you think that staff well-being is high in your team, or do you think people are struggling? Just interesting to see whether it differs between individual scores in team wellbeing scores. So if you could pop in the chat what you would rate your team wellbeing. Again, no pressure to do this, only if you feel comfortable to do so. Three, yeah. So similar to sort of personal wellbeing scores. 6, 7, yeah. So very similar to sort of individual scores. And similarly, from what we do to support our own well-being, what do you think sort of as a team you could do to improve your well-being one score? Is there anything you think you could do differently or that could be done as well as what you're already doing to improve well-being? So it might be having more sort of well-being check-ins. It might be that actually I've really been more open with one another. Yeah. So having them conversations, having conversations about well-being, about mental health, opening up that dialogue in teams, in organisations. Lovely. And I'm hoping that some of the sort of resources we spoke about today can be sort of used as tools that people can take forward to back to their teams, that actually, I know that my colleague's struggling, I can show them that they can get support this way, or they can use this skill. Got a couple of people typing. Right, we'll come back to James in the chat. So I'll just mention about some of the resources that are available. So Leading Mental Wellbeing Together is a webinar we play in partnership with the Seller Trust. So this is all about learning about mental wellbeing and how leading mental wellbeing is everyone's responsibility. So it's a 2-hour facilitated webinar that explores the concept of mental wellbeing within the context of leadership. So if you're a manager or a leader in a team, it's thinking about how we can support our teams, but also in the face of the pandemic. So thinking about how wellbeing has been changed in the pandemic and how supporting wellbeing might have changed. So this is a really, really cool course. I myself have been on it, and it is really good because it gives up-to-date information, up-to-date research, but also gives loads of information about how we can recognise signs of poor mental well-being, self-care, leading through adversity. So there's a couple of open sessions on the 17th of March and the 29th of March. There will be some more sessions in April and May. But additionally, if you think it might be worth your team coming along and a training as a session together, we found that it actually is really useful to support as a team and to build team resilience. So if anyone will be interested in that, if you just drop us an email, we can arrange you to have sort of a bespoke team session of leading mental wellbeing together.
So we have the check-in campaign. So that's online resources as well, full of online resources on how to check in with your staff, kind of the check-in before shift and after shift, lots of resources online there that are free. And then also there's our microsite with a live link, which has all the information that we've talked about on there, the self-referral site for the therapy service, all the dates for the sessions that you can book onto, what Lucy was just mentioning then. So that's kind of everything that we've been talking about is on our microsite there. And so also we could think about what might be a barrier for seeking support for our own well-being. It could be things like time. You don't really have enough time. Some people don't feel confident enough to speak up about their mental health. In some teams, there's the stigma is still attached to mental health, and it's that culture where people don't feel able to talk about it, which could act as a barrier. So if you can have a think about possible barriers, not even for yourself, kind of others, what people might face in seeking support for your own mental health. I know different cultures, language barriers, there are kind of a whole range really. So think about what barrier for your own mental health, and if you can't think of any for others as well, and again for your team, if you could just pop those on in the chat. Yeah, not being able to open up. It's the stigma around mental health, which is still around, and it's the culture and the feeling of potentially feeling judged, like you're doing something wrong, like you're weak. But that's not the case. It's a strength to speak up. Yeah, time, you know, we've never got enough time. We always think it's better spent elsewhere, but it's like we said before, it is better to speak up early and kind of deal with things really before they do become overwhelming. Yeah, a fear of acceptance. Yeah, I
think these are things that we've all that we've seen throughout working in the hub that are barriers for seeking support. I think time is a massive one. People think, well, I haven't got enough time to manage all the stuff in my workday, so how on earth am I going to put time aside to think about my own well-being, to go to support, to have a session of if I need some therapeutic support? I haven't got the time for that. But actually, it's really important to make that time, because if we don't, what's going to happen is we're just going to keep continuing moving forward, and we're going to struggle, and there's going to be no resolution. So dismissing the need to seek help, yeah. So not sort of not feeling like you need support. So a lot of people that we've come through said, oh, I think someone has it worse. Someone, that person has experienced this, therefore they need support more than I do. Actually, we all have our own difficulties and our own struggles, and what one person might find difficult, another person might not. We're all individuals and we all need support with different things.
Yeah.
Health is my condition. Yeah. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, sometimes with time as well, it can be a cultural issue with team leaders as well. Sometimes team leaders don't allow the staff time off to go seek help, or if we've done kind of sessions in person. I remember I did one last year when I worked at a different organisation, and we put this on for the ward staff, and they weren't allowed time to come to the session. So again, it's building it in the culture really, that it is important to take the time out and kind of feeding that through the team where it does reach managers as well.
And I think that sort of leads on to what we were going to say next, which is how would we overcome these barriers? So like Jenny said, actually having that culture where well-being is talked about, building in well-being into are structures that already exist. So building in sort of check-in points, using the Start Well, End Well framework in every day. That's one way of helping overcome these barriers. Can anyone think of any other ways that might help overcome any of the barriers we spoke about, or any of them in the chat? What do we think we could potentially do, or maybe others could support us in doing, to overcome these barriers? I suppose time is one that is really difficult, because if we haven't got the time, what do we drop? What do we give? And I think there's a lot about giving permission to using that time to seek support.
Yeah, kind of reevaluating priorities and recognising that wellbeing is a priority, because ultimately it can impact upon patient care if staff aren't feeling good, which is kind of our motivation as well.
Yeah, creating a culture where health and wellbeing is important. Yeah, I think that is the key thing for all the barriers that have been talked about. If the culture is right, if we're having conversations about health and wellbeing, it almost becomes preventative, because these conversations are being having early, so people know where to seek the support, they know where to get the support. And it sort of comes on to a piece of a service evaluation we've done with the Hub in collaboration with Leeds University. And we've actually found, so this is kind of hot off the press, this has only just been done, that the we dynamic, so the dynamic we have with our colleagues within a team, within our manager, can be important in two ways, because it can be an enabler to seek support for wellbeing. So it can help us to seek support, but it also can be a barrier. So if we're not in a team or in a culture where we feel like we're able to seek support for wellbeing, it acts as a barrier. So the dynamics within teams are so important, and creating that culture of health and wellbeing. So just finally, just as we're finishing up, there's some key contact information. Like we said before, we've got our staff support line, and it's free phone, open 8 till 8, 7 days a week. Our website has all our up-to-date offers, and a lot of our offers you can book onto via our email. We and Jenny will also pop our emails in the chat, so if anyone has any direct questions that they don't feel comfortable asking here, please feel free to send us an email. But other than that, does anyone have any questions, any sort of anything else that they would like to know? Yeah, brilliant. Well, thank you very much for having us today. I'll hand back over to James.
Thank you. Thanks, Lucy and Jenny. Thanks for that. Really interesting that. Does anybody have any questions? If not, I'll stop the recording. If anyone's got any questions they want to ask, I'll stop the recording and they can ask them after, so it's not recorded, if that's going to be better for some people. No. Okay, I'll just stop the recording and then